Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Loud and Agile Network. Today, we are here for a very interesting topic because it has a unique word in it. The topic is growing teaminess, and that's the unique word. I think Dhaval invented it, and I'm very curious to hear what this word teaminess means. We are very excited to have Dhaval with us today. Dhaval uh, presented at LAN last year as well, and we learned so much from him, and it was such an exciting talk. And we are really, really excited to bring him back. A little bit about Dhaval. Dhaval Panchal is an experienced executive, organization design consultant, and Scrum Alliance certified Agile coach and trainer. So he has CEC, CTC, and CST since 2008. He has been practicing Agile since 2003 and has helped build multiple Agile organizations from the ground up. He has led large Agile transformation at Fortune 500 companies as well as mid-sized product companies. He has firsthand experience with transformation challenges in oil and gas, banking, insurance, gaming, and medical domains. Without further ado, please help me in welcoming Dhaval Panchal. Dhaval, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Toby, and thank you for the network. How do I say it, Toby? You said it different, Loudon or
Loudon, Loudon.
Loudon Agile Network. Yes, it's so good to see some of you. I mean, Caleb, I know. Om, good to see you. I know we've interacted online in the social sphere, but I don't know if I've seen you before. Thank you all. Right. Let me find my footing because getting started on a topic is always a little, I have to find my footing and then we'll get started. So first things first, I should share my screen and give you a little bit of an idea of what the next hour or so looks like before we dive into the topic. What I intend to do is I want to kind of talk about this topic area called growing teaminess. The word teaminess itself is not part of the English dictionary. I don't think I can claim that I invented the word, but I probably heard it in the general Agile circles, the community, way back in 2004, 2005, and somehow it stuck with me. It's not a proper dictionary word, so you won't find it, but you can get a feel for what is implied by that, right? When we say teaminess, we are primarily talking about a feeling where you are working with people all towards a shared goal. What I want to do is I want to talk about growing teaminess, build on that concept to then arrive at what the team self-managing canvas is. I think it will take us about 30, 35 minutes, and then that will give us some time for Q&A. It's evening time. I'm a little more relaxed than I would be in the normal office hours, so I would expect it will be a friendly discussion amongst us as opposed to, a different flavor, very intense. Yeah. So shall we get started? I hope you all can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
I know we are all dialing from home. I love seeing your faces. I love to see how you're connecting with the topic area. So Caleb, thank you so much for being there. If you can, right? I know not everyone can do that, but if you can, come online. So I feel like I'm talking to people, even though the technology is kind of, it creates its own barriers and distance, right? So if you can, it's not a requirement. So I can kind of follow along with your body language, and it helps me to present better. Yeah. So thank you for being on camera if you can. Okay. Thank you for a fantastic introduction, Toby. I don't think I can top that. As you were talking about it, I was like, maybe you should introduce me to all my clients as well, The talk that I gave at Loudon Network last year is the talk that I am now going to give at the Scrum Gathering in Portland. I believe, Toby, you are also there. So in many ways, this network has helped me to secure a speaking spot at a global conference, because I presented the talk, and then the recording of it, I sent it to the review because you'd always submit your materials. So it's a win-win, right? So thank you for having me last year. Thank you for
But
having
you
me.
also presented at Agile Alliance last year, which is a very coveted, difficult to get.
Yes, yes. At the Agile conference last year, I had a workshop. I really enjoyed doing that workshop. Unfortunately, this year I didn't submit anything because of scheduling and all of that. But yes, it was fun over there as well. All right. What I'm going to ask you to do is, if you have your phone, you can use the camera function to use the QR code. There's a Google Forms that helps me to send you a copy of the slides, which will be a PDF. And you also get the option to unsubscribe from my newsletter. I try not to spam people, but it gives you a little bit of a feel for who we are and what tips and tricks and other areas of interest that you might find. The QR code and the URL will show up again at a later point. Yeah.
Put it in the chat as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, by the way, I will not be monitoring the chat window. I'll be focused here so we can process the chat at the end. Yeah. Now, one of the first things before we get into the notion of teaminess and the team self-managing canvas is let's talk about boundaries. Yeah. Boundaries are in a living system a functional component of that system. Now, one of the simplest things to understand is for us in our human body, our skin is the biggest organ. It has sensitivity to touch. It has sensitivity to other signals in our environment. If you've had the little temperature change and hair on your, on your skin kind of rise up, there is some interaction that is happening because the boundary that we use is actually a functional component of the system, not just a perimeter. And this is a very important concept to understand when we talk about teaminess, is how we manage these boundaries are going to make a big difference. The way you connect with your environment is through what you do, your actions, how you act, what you choose to do, what you choose not to do, and how you communicate. Yeah. These are your ways of engaging with your own environment. And here I'm talking in the sense of engagement in a team-based environment or a workplace environment. Of course, there are other things that you would do, but primarily this is what do you do, how you behave, and how you communicate is your interaction with your environment and people in it. One of the things we have recognized that there is always going to be some degree of hierarchy. A hierarchy here is in terms of influence. The first is your personal. When you are interacting with people in your day-to-day work life, in your day-to-day personal life, you are going to have a very strong influence on the individuals that you interact with. Depending now on your role or how much credibility people have in what you say, and how you act and what you do, you may have a larger global influence, but most likely your influence is going to be very much local to the people that you work with and interact with on a day-to-day basis. The team itself is going to also have very strong localized influence within the people inside that team, and maybe some influence on people outside the team. The organization, on the other hand, tends to have a strong global influence, but very weak local influence. And what I mean by this is, as an organization, some decisions or aspects of your organization are going to have a broad appeal in the larger organization, but individually for people within the organization, it will have different significance in different parts of the org. So if you are, let's say, a very strong command and control organization, there would be a general sense of we have to run it by our superiors first, but you should not be surprised if you find a small pocket where people are not so permission-based, rule-based, but they tend to have a far different way of working with each other, right? So in other words, the organization sets the tone, but the music is created by local teams and local parts of the organization depending on what they are doing, which is what I mean by strong global influence, but weak local influence, as opposed to for an individual who would have a very strong local influence, but weak global influence. Okay. Systems, boundaries, they actively engage to interpret and respond to its environment. So what we are going to do is we are going to understand these three boundaries: personal, team, and the organizational, and how that influenced what the self-managing team canvasses. The first is at a personal level, right? If I am working in an organization, whether I'm in a team or in a working group, there is going to be an ideal preference of how I would like to work. And then there is going to be an ideal preference of how someone else would like to work. In this particular example, there is person A and person B. Now, there is some work that someone has to do. If that work involves A and B, right? It is not something that one individual can do on their own and then we are done with it. But if it involves A and B, there is going to be some preference of what is perfect or ideal for me versus what is perfect or ideal for the other. Now, how these two people resolve and make adjustments for each other is going to make a world of a difference. Say, for example, if I go into an organization, let's say we've just gone to an organization, their individuals work in isolation. In other words, if you ask them, what is your ideal day? What they will say is, you know, I have my coffee in the morning, then I check my email, then I finish all my tasks, break for lunch, and then in the evening, I'm done with my work. If I now go to a different organization that is an agile organization and ask an individual there, what is it like for you to have an ideal work environment? They'll say, you know, I wake up in the morning, have my coffee, we have a team check-in, it's only about 15 minutes or so. We might have to have some collaboration on designing a problem. And the actual work I do kind of depends. Sometimes my lunchtime shifts, but that's okay. And we close our day by the end of the 5 p.m. Now, different people have different styles of working, different preferences of working, and different environments that they are working in. When these two people come together, someone will have to make an adjustment in order for the collective, for the two people to have a better outcome. When it is made as a compromise, where both people are unhappy as a result of it, the resultant outcome is not going to be a better outcome. This would be the lowest common denominator of what we could expect to get. On the other hand, if there is a win-lose dynamic where person A wins over person B in their preferences, or person B wins over person A in their preferences, one of them is winning, the other person is losing. Where you have a better outcome is when A and B are collaborating to identify a win-win solution where both can get what they want, but make adjustments that they are capable and willing to make. So, for example, in one of my early teams, we had, and this is a fairly simple example, there were people who would like to come to work at 6 a.m. in the morning, and they would leave at 3 p.m. And others like me would come at 9 or 9:30 in the morning, and we would stay until 5 or 5:30. So a compromise that we had to make in our team was what would be core meeting hours? Because what we discovered was there were times when a group of people will hold a design meeting and the people who left early would feel left out. Like, why was I not consulted or involved in this design decision? So we said, let's have a core working hours that is going to be a common place for us to make those decisions that impact everyone else. So far with me? Yeah. Now, teams are built on trust, and this trust will only happen when you come and practice building trust in the environment that you are in. In other words, You will trust your team members if you have confidence that other members of the team will not take unfair advantage of you, right? And no one likes to be the sucker, not even Milton, you know. The last laugh is Milton's last laugh, sipping a pina colada, you know, at the end of the classic cult movie, Office Space. So please recognize that you have to first and foremost manage your own personal interactions with your own team members. You may not intend to take advantage of somebody else, but you can sense that somebody feels that they are probably not given a fair treatment in your team. And if you feel that someone or yourself is not getting a fair treatment inside your own team, reach out to them, because they may not show it, but the trust has eroded, and that is going to have an impact on how two individuals work with each other, or how an individual works with other individuals inside a team. What we mean by this is there is no I in a team. So inside a team, there needs to be a conversation about how are we going to cooperate with each other? What does it mean to be cooperative with each other? What are some coordination mechanisms that we need inside the team so we know when to hold our sessions, meet, or discuss? And what norms are going to help us to have psychological safety so people can learn, you know, how to express their voice without fear that somebody will jump on them and tell them that they are not right or they are wrong. You know, what we want is a way for the team to have open, honest conversations, but also do it at a time and place where they are able to do that. So when we talk about these team norms, we are essentially saying, you know, what will help us be a real team, as opposed to be a group of people who are afraid of sharing what we think needs to be done for solving a particular problem. In groups, we need to know who does what. And this is a very delicate problem at the start, especially for teams, because when you have a group of people come together and the organization says you all should be team, and let's just say they tell us person A is going to be our Scrum Master. If I'm joining a team, I'm going to assume that the new Scrum Master is going to do exactly what my previous Scrum Master did. I mean, that's a very human tendency to assume based on our past experience. It would help if we would go and ask the person to say, hey, you are our Scrum Master. What do you think you are going to do? Here's what I think a Scrum Master does. And now have a common understanding of what we are going to do in this situation, in this particular team, as opposed to both people expecting based on past experience and never validating whether that experience is true in this context, here and now. This is a much more softer expectation, you know, that individuals have to set with each other. There's also the expectation that an organization can have. The organization might have some organizations typically, right, have some expectations of cultural values and behaviors that are acceptable and that are not acceptable. So in some organizations, it's not okay to cuss. In other organizations, it's okay to be relaxed and you can cuss, right? So different organizations have different norms, different cultural values. I'm not here to judge which is right or wrong, but your organization will have some set of values. And it is important that the people who are joining your team are filtered for that. And also when they join your organization, if you're expecting them to play a role, like a product owner or a Scrum Master, you are explicit about what it means. So when they join a team, they know what expectations and responsibilities your organization expects from them. Now, what will often happen in teams is because these expectations are not explicitly called out or it's not discussed openly, people are going to kind of be not so sure if I should hold my team member accountable. Is this really something that I am expected to do because I am gray or unclear on that aspect myself? So what will happen is work will start to slip, and then soon enough, you will have the old hierarchy of a lead or someone else coming in the team or being added into the team from the outside, because the organization has a need that you produce quality products. And if consistently definition of done is being missed or ignored, and the team members are not addressing it because they have not yet had that conversation around the definition of done, your organization has no choice but to appoint someone that they can hold and blame at some point, because you see the organization has very weak influence at the team level. So the way they would try to insert that influence is by saying person X is now the person that the organizational management will hold accountable for this team doing the quality. So in other words, if the team doesn't know what to expect from each other, it will no longer remain a team. Something will occur in the system to turn it into a hierarchy inside the team itself. So if we want to manage ourselves, we want to be very clear about what responsibilities we have as members inside the team and how are we going to hold each other accountable to it. That's what we mean when we say who does what. The roles and responsibilities are often boundaries that, like I said, there are some explicit norms, explicit boundaries that your organization will have or you will have based on the choice of the Agile framework. Like Scrum will have explicit role, or Kanban will have some explicit expectations. There's going to be something that is in between. Who's going to update our wiki? Why are we missing up on ignoring the definition of done? And then there are some implicit unsaid expectations of how we're going to work. All of these things, you can kind of capture it in a cross-functional team, because in a cross-functional team, you're expecting that individuals are able to work well with others who come from different functional backgrounds. When we say a cross-functional team, we don't say that an individual has all the skills that they need to build the whole product themselves. What we are saying is people have deep areas of expertise, maybe 2 or 3 deep areas of expertise, but they also have the social competence to work with other people and value their contribution in order to build a product. In other words, people know how to collaborate with each other and how to cooperate with each other so they can come up with a solution which is better than what a single individual could have arrived at only on themselves. Catch your breath. Oftentimes organizations, they misunderstand that if I ask for a team, I'll get one and that will be done. And some managers will never get it. But if you have done any kind of gardening, it takes a while. Yeah. In other words, you can't expect lemon from a tomato plant. It matters what you plant, the kind of environment you give, and how you nurture it, because every team has its own purpose. Why your organization wants to have this specific team. Why not just pull random people from the street and ask them to do something? If you are purposeful about how you're creating a team, you also have some purpose around that particular team. And you want to have a clear idea of what real work are we going to do together as team members, and what is the purpose that we are taking on as a team, which is different than the larger organizational purpose. So if you look at, perhaps if you go to your organizational website, you might find a mission statement, and that might be very broad. What I'm talking about here is a much more narrower focus that your team has, which ideally would be aligned with the larger organizational mission. And that's what we are talking about, is not just a broad organizational mission, but what is the specific purpose for this particular team. Without that clarity, teams are going to struggle, because oftentimes you'll find a group of people are asked to form into a team, and if they don't have a long-term purpose, gossip and organizational things will start taking control of the team's direction. It could be that in some organizations, it could be, oh, this team is assembled for Project X, so everyone is happy because Project X is still expected to go for 3 more months. But as it gets closer to the end of 3 months, people are now worried about things like, do I have a job? What project are we going to get? Like all of these things, they add to the overhead of churn that the organization will have to experience if they don't set a team for a purpose first and then funnel projects to them, as opposed to creating and assembling a team for a project and then dismantling it. This purpose needs to be supported by the organization, and you have to have people in the team see some personal benefit in contributing towards the larger team purpose. This could be, this is always different for different individuals. For example, you might have an individual who is a junior programmer, might say, you know, I really want to work on this team because I get to pair with a senior programmer who's an expert or someone I admire, so I can pair with them and learn from someone who I value as an expert in that area. That could be the reason why the junior programmer is joining the team, whereas the senior programmer might be in the team because they might say, I'm working on this project because it solves a very interesting problem and I get to experiment or play with this particular technology, and that's why I'm on this project. So you could have 2 or 3 different people on the same team with totally different reasons why they are there. But when they are here, they can all connect to the larger shared purpose that this team is producing a product line or delivering on a project that meets each of the other people's interests in some shape or form. So when we talk about a team, what is important is why should we even have a team? Part of the thing that we tend to romanticize this notion of a team, you know. Ideally, if I had my way, I would get everything I need and I would only talk to 3 or 4 people that I'm really familiar with, right? So why should I take the effort of going into forming a team? Because the very act of forming a team is now going to require people to change their personal preferences. They will have to have dialogue. They will have to have some kind of things they give up in order to hope for something better that they could make. All of this is friction. It's going to generate a lot of heat before it gets better. So if we are going to ask a group of people to step out of their comfort zone, and it is stepping out of the comfort zone when you become a team doesn't become like that. It takes a lot of work from the members of the team to learn how to dissipate the heat of working with other people. So if we are going to say, let's form this team, and people in the newly formed team are going to go through a period where it is not going to be perfect. It is going to actually be a little worse before it starts to get better. We want to ask our people to go into a team if we have something really significant and meaningful for them, which is why I expect that when we talk about the purpose of the team, the senior management is involved in it. And at minimum, it is a year-long focus for the team. It could be much longer than a year, but if you're thinking we are forming a team for this short, less than a year, you're doing a lot of disservice, because the starting and stopping of a team itself is going to take away most of your benefits away. When you say our purpose is X, you also want to be explicit about what the purpose is not. A common dynamic you'll see in organizations is if you happen to touch one application at some point in your life, in your career in the company, you are now the de facto support person for that application, right? So the smart people will start practicing strategic incompetence. Like they will say, I don't know. And even though they know how to do it, so they can focus on actually doing the work that matters. But not everyone is that tricky, right? So you want to be very clear about what the team can do, but chooses not to do. What are the constraints that the team members have? Are there some rules, cultural norms? Today, I think the conversation around remote, in-person, hybrid, how do we choose to spend the time when we are all in the office? How do we choose to work when we are all working remote? If we are in hybrid, those are some very important conversations that team members should be having as of now, because you want to make the best use of the different modalities that is available to you, because it comes with freedom, but it also comes with uncertainty, because if you never find the right way to use your hybrid model, then you are going to do less quality work than you would if you were all in the same place, right? So there's a lot of trade-offs to be made. So here it's important to be very clear about what our constraints are and how are we going to organize around our constraints. A thing that I find to be quite interesting is if you go to an organization and if they, and I try to do that sometimes, but you'll just tap onto the shoulder of an individual and you'll say, hey, what do you do here? And pay attention to what they say. Yeah. If the individual responds by saying, you know, I am a QA engineer, or I am a software engineer, or I am an architect, and then go on to describe what an engineer does in the company, what you are hearing is that the individual has a very strong affiliation to their functional skill, as opposed to an affiliation to the team that they are a member of. So when you are creating a cross-functional team, you want to give this team an opportunity to rename and reinvent its identity. Because after they have had a conversation about what we do and what our purpose is, it would be good to ask one of the members, tap on their shoulders and say, hey, what do you do here? And hopefully they give an answer that I solved this problem for this customer, as opposed to saying, I cut code, or I write automated tests, or those are functional contributions, necessary and important, but that's not why the team's put together. So what is the team name? Now, some organizations and groupings may go very creative. Like I've seen team names that are in line with sports teams, like the Bears or the Pirates or something like that. And that's totally okay. Have fun with it. But the idea is to help the individual disconnect from a functional identity and form a new identity with their team. Once you have a team and that team has worked over a long period of time, you don't want to assume that just because you have one good team, I can now take members of this team, put it into multiple different teams, and hope to generate multiple better teams that way. Don't cut the goose that lays golden eggs. Yeah, a team is based, the effectiveness of a team is earned by the relationships that people build with each other inside the team. So it is the relationship and how the people work with each other. That is what makes a group of people into a team. If I now take one person out of this group and try to seed another team somewhere else, those relationships are now broken. I now have this person who'll have to start from scratch, building new relationships with new people, and it may or may not work out. So instead of taking that risk, because we have made the investment of forming a great team, why not find this team to better and more challenging problems, as opposed to try to break the team every now and then? Here, the focus for the organization should be more about what did we do to get this awesome team, and how can we recreate those conditions so we can get more awesome teams somewhere else, as opposed to saying, let me just take people and break them up into 10 different teams and hope it all works out. Yeah, that would be very naive. We don't know why people do what they do, right? But it happens, and it's not our place to judge that. But what you want to make sure that in your team, there is some degree of autonomy for the individual, but it doesn't take away the accountability within the team. So what you want is the team to define its own performance outcomes. Oftentimes, what we will see is that organizations will say, here's your mission, project, objective, and here's how we are going to measure you. Yeah, so both of those things come from top down. And this tends to create a lack of agency for the individuals in the team, because they trust that the organizational leadership will pick the right mission, the right objective. But if they don't trust the team to know how they're going to get there, then the measures and metrics and everything else, they become vanity measures and vanity metrics. And you see this dynamic in a lot of so-called agile teams, where they will use velocity, and the organization will imply either explicitly or implicitly some target or some rate of increase for velocity in some ways. And the teams will say, like, okay, so our purpose is X, and the management wants us to improve velocity by 10 points. How are the two connected? I can't see the connection, so therefore let's just game the metric so people just leave us alone, right? And now there is no accountability around that measure. So what you want is within a team, have the team have the conversation with itself, saying, given what our purpose is, what should be the measures that we need to use that will help us know whether we are on track or not on track towards a larger purpose. As a manager, as a senior manager in the organization, you can provide consultative feedback to the team. You could inform the team to say, hey, our purpose is X, you're choosing these leading or lagging indicators. I would say that this one doesn't really help, and here's why, or have you considered this, and here's why. Let the team own their own measures, and then it becomes a far better way for the team to self-manage than for us to impose some measures and metrics and tell them it's good or bad. The second challenge in organizations is oftentimes people, and the representative heuristic is people are going to judge probability of something happening based on similarity of it. In simpler words, let me put it slightly differently. Let's say I have a stakeholder, and I am a stakeholder, and I like Toby, right? Because he is the organizer of this network. So for the last 6 months, anytime I have a problem, I walk up to Toby's desk, or I send him an email or make a call, and Toby's always nice. He always responds to my email, and I get my problem resolved, or I know what to do next, right? Something good happens. Now, Toby is now joined this a team now, and he's in team with other people because they are solving a very important problem. I am a stakeholder. I have a problem. What will I do? I'm going to still go to Toby, because that's the conditioning, and that's how I've always responded to my problems. The fact that Toby is in a new team was an email that came to me and I was informed about it, but that doesn't mean I still could not connect the dots that my actions need to change. I still feel connected to him as a friend and a colleague, and I'm going to reach out. Now, at this point, as a team member, let's say Toby is like, okay, I'm in this team. Stakeholder reaches out, he's going to say, hey, you should meet our product owner, so-and-so, and they will help prioritize your request, and we will figure out how to do it or whatnot. Yeah. Toby's very nice in informing me about this new role and new person. I don't know who the new person is. I just know they are a product owner. I am a stakeholder. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go find another team member from Toby's team, who I also have some relationship with, and I'll ask them. I'll ask Meenakshi, can you take my request? And at this point, if Meenakshi says, yes, it's easy, it's 2 minutes, it's 3 minutes, I'll do it for you. My next conversation with Toby would be, hey, Toby, what happened? I thought we were friends. You see, what is happening here is that I have a set behavior. So if mom says no, I'm going to find dad to say yes, and vice versa. And that's a game that is much easier, low-cost game for me to play. And it is harder for me to accept that something has changed because members have moved into a team. Now, here the response from the second team member was different. They said the same thing. Do you know we have a product owner and they're so awesome, they'll help prioritize your product backlog. Now I'm hearing the same message from 2 or 3 different team members. So I know that this is how this team works. In other words, what is happening is that in individual interactions with stakeholders who may be at a much higher level in your organizational hierarchy, it will be difficult for one person to take a stand on how you want to work. But if you all agree as a team that we are going to have a consistent response, irrespective of who comes and asks for a certain thing from us, then there is strength in numbers. Then you're not standing out on your own saying, hey, we are doing Scrum and our product owner should prioritize, while everybody else is trying to take on stakeholder requests as they come. But you are all saying that this is a good thing. We all agree and support this way of working, which is why we are working the way we are working. Now, if you're Kanban, you might have a different conversation, and it could be around your work in progress limit, and the team member might say, hey, I already have 3 items, our WIP limit is 3. So I cannot take it now until I move one of them, and then yours will be the next item that I work on. So irrespective of what approach you use as a team, if you have consistency in how you engage with your environment, people outside your team, you are going to help them see how your team works differently. And it is part of a retraining effort for other people in your organization. And then that's pretty much what I intend to say is be consistent on what you choose to amplify and what you choose to dampen in your interactions with others in your organization as a team. Your organization is going to look at the team as a single unit and also going to look at you as a single individual. The unfortunate thing is those connections will be picked based on what suits their personal interest at that time. In other words, if I can get what I want by saying you are an individual, I'll do that. But if I can get what I want by saying your team signed up for the project to be released on this feature, I'll do that. You should not expect that people will have a consistent understanding of when they are engaging with the team versus when they're engaging with an individual. So it is up to the team to start training the organization around it to say, as a team, this is our response. As an individual, our response is totally different, or it matters, right? Like what response is an individual response versus what response is a team response. I might have been confusing, so I'm going to correct myself slightly with an example. If someone comes up and says, hey, Toby, shall we go for a coffee? That's an individual response that Toby can make on their own. And you should respond. But if I go to Toby and say, can I add this story or can you do this work inside the sprint? Now, here you would expect a team member or Toby to say, this is not like us going for a coffee. It has an impact on other members of the team. So no, I cannot decide, or let's go to the PO and we'll decide together, or let's bring it to the team. So you are basically making the organization aware what decisions involve other people versus what decisions you can just make on your own. Like going for coffee, meeting for lunch, those are individual decisions. In some contexts, you might have, okay, I provide consultative support, and that is an individual decision your team has made, that individuals can help customers through Q&A or some consultative support type activities. And that's just an individual choice. That may be one way of distinguishing what is an individual response versus a collective response in your org. The canvas is a way to kind of capture all of these different elements. My intent with going through all the different thinking behind it first was to then bring it back here so it's not like one overwhelming piece, right? Talk about the team name, what the purpose is, what it is not, and what constraints exist. This part of the canvas on the left-hand side has to have senior management involvement explicitly on purposes and purposes not. The middle portion around team working agreements, roles and key responsibilities, this is something that the team needs to have a conversation with its own members. One of the things that I have seen quite helpful is, and I'll use Scrum as an example, is to have the whole team read the Scrum guide. It's 13 pages. Now, as a team, brainstorm on 5 to 7 expectations you have from a Scrum Master, 5 to 7 expectations from a PO, and 5 to 7 expectations from each other in the team. Boil it down into something that is simple and easy to capture and capture that. Now, as the team goes through multiple iterations, bring the canvas back out after 3 months to see how you would have a conversation around the same topics and see what changes or what remains the same. How are we going to measure our performance goals? This is something that the team has to decide and hold itself accountable to. And how are we going to interact with our environment? What we choose to amplify, what we choose to dampen as a single team, as a single unit. All right, I'm going to pause at this. I do lead online leadership courses. I have a in-person product owner course coming up in Houston. This is my experiment in trying to get people back to be in person with other folks. Question time. So I'm going to keep this here. So if you want to sign up or connect with me or send me an email, this would be a good time to do that. And I think I want to turn the controls back to you, Meenakshi, right? And you'll help me with the questions, and also we can see where to go from here. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that very inspiring teaminess dialogue. Although it was a presentation, your way and means delivering it almost felt like a engaging dialogue. Thank you.
I was hoping to have a conversation. So yes.
Awesome. I see Nana's raised their hand. So
Okay.
feel free to come off mute and give your, comments. If you can't come off mute, feel free to type it in the chat. I'll read it out.
Hey everyone, this is Om. I just had a quick question on the leading and lagging indicators. I like the idea of tracking them, but if you can give some examples of those, it would be very helpful.
Right. Let me go back. Okay. So here, what we are talking about is how do we know that we have arrived our goal state? So typically, if we have a long-term purpose for a team, would say, okay, this team is created so that we can improve the customer experience for using whatever product. So your lagging indicator should be some way of knowing that whether you've done it or not, right? The amount of number of clicks to get something done has gone down, or the ease or the number of people finishing a workflow has gone up. Like these are things that you can check for when they have actually happened. So those are like lagging indicators. Leading indicators are guesses for us to say, if we measure this, if we make improvement, or if this measure changes, then it gives us a good feel that it will have an impact on the lagging indicator. So for example, we might say, okay, we are trying to improve the user experience for our particular product. A clear lagging indicator is that more users are able to complete the whole workflow, that they are not abandoning the workflow. And one of the leading indicators towards that would be that we have higher test coverage, right? Because the team knows what is in the system that is causing the problems, which is not making the thing move. It could be that one of the modules there is so buggy that we don't even know what goes wrong, and the customer kind of abandons the workflow because they just get exceptioned out somewhere and no one knows what had happened. So we don't know what that is. So let the team have a conversation about what our purpose is. What is our performance goal? Like improve end-to-end user, workflow. And then they would know what they need to do today and what improvements they need to see, so they can show improvement on the lagging indicators.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Feel free to come off mute. Oh, Caleb. Caleb, did I say your name right?
Yes,
Awesome.
I will answer regardless. On the leading and lagging indicators, do you ever combine those? Have you ever seen them combined with qualitative and quantitative as well? I wind up using them both in conjunction to help teams understand whether they're measuring the right thing. And I was just curious if you use that. An example I'll use is this week. It was the first time that I'd heard someone say that team health indexes are leading indicators of potential velocity impact in 1 to 2 sprints, and I'd never heard that before. And so even me thinking that was a lagging indicator, I was off. And so curious whether the qualitative quantitative comes into the leading lagging as well.
Yeah. I mean, that comes in like all measures. You will have some aspect of what is the quantity, what's the actual measurement, and how valid is that measurement, right? So if I'm driving a car, I can look at my odometer. That is a lagging indicator. My car has covered so many miles. Now, I can look at a leading indicator, which is my speed, 20 miles per hour or 60 miles per hour. But if I don't know what context I am in, it gives me no. If I told you I was going 60 miles per hour in a school zone, all of your eyes will bulge and you'll say, bad driver, you should be arrested. But if I said I was going 60 miles per hour on a freeway, you'd be, yeah, that's totally normal. So for leading indicators, there's a lot of context around it. For lagging, it's supposed to be, the car has so many miles. Done. It tells you whether you have achieved the goal state or not. which actually kind of ties into your OKR systems, like objectives and key results. Like, what is a long-term objective? How do we know whether we've met it or not? And what results do we want to see along the way that gives us a sense that we are going to hit our long-term target? And the leading ones, they keep on changing, and our judgment of it also keeps on changing. Hopefully the lagging is fairly clear, like people know what target they're going after.
Thank you, Dhaval. Great answer. Jay is next.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Deval, for that very insightful presentation. I have a very quick question for you. What advice or tips would you give one who's about to lead a new team, a new organization,
Right.
with the principles that you've just shared with us, some of which are very, insightful, more so if it's a team that one is regularly used to working with. But what advice would you give? What tips would you give if I'm about to get into a new team, a new organization? Thank you.
Right. If I were to boil it down to one phrase, when in doubt, ask the team. So you have a team. People may not recognize that they are in a team day one, right? You are a new person joining a new group of people. So they expect some degree of, they expect some contribution from you. I don't know what role you are taking in, what specialty or skills you bring in. So definitely you'll have an opinion about what to do in a certain situation. But if it is not a clear-cut answer, don't assume that you know what the other people know. Raise it for the team. You say, hey, here's the problem that I see. Here's what my contribution looks like, but it will not solve the whole problem. So how do we solve it together? So, because the doubt is that sense of I don't know what exactly we need to do. So I have some idea, but not the whole idea. And oftentimes individuals will make assumptions that, oh, if I just do this, it should be easy for the other people. But if you pose it as a question back to the team to say, here's the problem I see, here's what I'm going to do. What do you all think we should do here? You're going to give the team an opportunity to grow as a team. There will be disagreements. You should expect there should be some disagreements between people, but how the team resolves those disagreements, the more they resolve those disagreements, the better they are at resolving future disagreements. I think what I'm trying to say is when a team is starting out initially, the kind of disagreements they will have will be very, you'll laugh about it after a year. Hey, you remember when we didn't get along because you ate carrots at the desk? Right, that's the kind of problems you'll be solving in the first 2 months as a team. By the time you are in a year, the disagreements that hopefully you are having is about how do we architect this, or what kind of infrastructure, or what kind of, so the class of problems need to change. In a team, problems don't go away. It's just the kind of problems people talk about change. So if you're a leader, look for what kind of problems the teams are solving, really solving. If they're still stuck at, I don't like you eating carrots, after 2 years, the team has not experienced growth, we still haven't ironed out the basic civil norms of how to work with each other.
So well said. I love that. You judge a maturity by the kind of problems you're experiencing repeatedly. Love that. I'm going to take that tomorrow to work.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jay.
We'll go to the chat where Karen has been patiently waiting. And then depending on the time, Rohit and Alan will come to you. So Karen says about organizational change management resources. Where do you see organizational change management resources best supporting team growth and the growth of the larger organization to adopt this new mindset and ways of working?
Right. So I'm assuming here you're talking about people, and then also things that people can get, right? Like maybe an organizational wiki that's about change or so on, right?
So I do organizational change management,
right.
and I was wondering from your perspective, do you ever work in projects where you have an organizational change management resource? And if so, what value do you see them bringing? And
Right.
if not, what value do you see them, being able to bring?
Right,
If
right.
they're there and they could be there.
Right. I mean, there is a huge leadership gap in terms of like helping people understand the change process, right? Oftentimes, what happens in organizations is when we say, hey, you are now going through this change effort. In this context, you are now in a new team. We expect them to accept it and love it from day one. And what that does to people is when they experience disagreement with team members, or they experience, I thought this was supposed to be great, like everybody said it's supposed to be great, but it's not turning out to be so great. Am I wrong, or is there something going on, right? So someone who is familiar with organizational change dynamic, if they were there to inform and educate people, like so they could be doing some kind of training to inform people, it is normal to go through I'll use a term as a shortcut, Bruce Tuckman's storming. It is normal that people will go through storming, and you should expect that. And then here are some strategies that you can use at a personal level to cope with this change. And let me educate you, coach you, train you. Like there's a lot of room there, right? Today, that space, the need is there. Who serves that need is typically in the current agile organizations is either an agile coach or a scrum master. So another way of looking at it is to say, how informed or well-versed are they with some of the thinking and practices of organizational change management? So
You're saying how well are the agile coaches and scrum masters aware of that? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, in some degree, like, do they understand the change process enough, right? So what, for example, you'll see there is a need for communicating. Oftentimes you'll see in organizations where they don't engage a change, a practitioner, organizational change practitioner. They'll create a team and they'll keep on moving, and then the team has to retrain the other stakeholders, which creates its own ups and downs. But if there is a more formal practitioner, they will come up with a communication plan. How are we going to inform all the stakeholders? What does this change mean? More detail depending on the kind of organization you're working with. So if you're working in a very projects organization, they would want a lot more detail on roles and responsibilities and detailed clarity on it. If you're working on a product organization, it's more loosely defined because that's how they roll, right? So you'll see in some organizations, the org change management folks they are there in a supporting role to multiple teams. And that's the kind of a thing that I have seen. To put a ratio, like 1:20, because the folks in the agile transformation are involved in actual day-to-day work, but they have guidance and support from an experienced org change consultant who provides a frame for how we're going to do this, and additional support if they want to find out more, right? So I don't know if I answered your question, but I mean, that's how I would approach.
Yeah, I was just very curious about your experience, your perspective, and who do you feel is the best person to facilitate the team canvas?
Karen, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt here since we are on time at 8 p.m. So
Oh, sorry, one
want to
word.
drop off, I just want to open that, space for people and respect their time. But if Dhaval is okay, we could probably stop the recording. Thank you. And continue depending on if Dhaval can stay back a few moments.